And so now it's just parents. And so I think parents, they're doing the job of like literally 20 people, these one or two people. And today they're like half of parents are single parents. So they're one person's doing the job of 20 people. And so I think a lot of parents in the West in the last few centuries feel completely overwhelmed by parenting, and for good reason. Like, it's not meant to be done alone or just with two people. And so I think in exasperation, they're just freaking out, trying to figure out how to do things. And they're like, I just need my kid to do this one thing right now. I need them to put their pajamas on. I need to change their diaper. I need them to brush their teeth or eat their vegetables or whatever it is. And so they just end up forcing that kid, however that comes about. And oftentimes it's by threatening punishments or by, enacting punishments. And I think that is one big reason that people parent so much, is because they don't have any support at all, really.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. You are listening to Don't Be Afraid to Talk podcast with James. I believe if we are going to affect change, we must go back to the basic, which for me, in essence, is conversations. Talking and listening is key for growth, and I hope our stories will bring us together and we can draw inspiration from each other. Conversation will include topics such as mental and physical health, trauma and its effect, suicidal thoughts, recovery, and well-being. We will continue to raise awareness and offer a different perspective, a mindset or an idea that could inspire you to take charge of your well-being and to grow as a human being. Thank you for joining us today for another episode of Ask the Expert. Today I'm joined by Luke. Luke is what we call peaceful parenting coach, and he's joining me from Florida. Today we're going to be discussing all things in relation to peaceful parenting. If you're listening today, have an open mind, and we hope you can learn something from today's episode. Luke, how are you?
Doing great. Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I look forward to this. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah. So, my name's Luke. I'm a peaceful parenting coach. And ever since I found out I was going to have kids, I was just, rabidly curious about parenting. And so I've been devouring books. I've been listening to podcasts. I've probably spent, thousands of hours just consuming parenting content and books. And I just find it fascinating. And every single last book I ever read on parenting is just a tremendous investment of my time. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And so I just felt compelled to start sharing this insanely valuable information with others. And so I started posting on Twitter and on YouTube. And so, and then I had the idea, well, what if I let people hire me for one-on-one coaching? I could really go in depth and help some people a lot. And so I've been doing the help a lot of people a little. And so I'm getting into the more helping a few number of people a ton. And so, I just am passionate about parenting. I think it's one of the biggest things we can do to make the world a better place is to just help people be better parents and stop making these fundamental parenting mistakes.
Yeah, some of the books you read, you had it up on Twitter. They're not your typical parenting book. It's not a book that you find in a maternity ward, for example. It wouldn't be like a top shelf book, like a lot of people would get like a magazine on parenting. But the ones that you read were more insightful parenting. So it's one of those. Well, it's not a job, but it's one of those. Let's just call it a job that requires a lot of time, effort, and
Oh yeah, no, there's no getting around it. Parenting is going to eat up lots and lots of your free time. And if your primary goal in life is to relax and get lots of sleep and have have zero stress, then parenting is not for you.
Yeah. Don't go down that road. Okay, super. And before we get going, we're going to play a quick game called One for One, where I'll give you a word and you say the first word that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Yeah. So the first one is dolphins,
Swimming.
bananas,
Peel.
traveling,
Vacation.
creation,
God.
and last one, expectations.
Happy.
Great stuff. Yeah, thank you. There's no right or wrong answers. I just like to start with that. I think it
Okay.
calms me down.
Interesting.
That's why I enjoy doing it. It just calms me down. So why not? And yeah, so I have a list of questions here for you, just in relation to peaceful parenting. And yeah, we just start from the top, and we get some so I can get some insight from you. Sorry. Now, a lot of them, yeah, I'm very curious. So the first one is, what do you do when the child doesn't listen?
Yeah. It's
It's a
a
big
great
question.
question. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And so there's a few different circumstances that it depends on, right? And so if you have a 2-year-old who doesn't listen, you'll respond differently than an 8-year-old, right? And so if a child is like not really able to talk yet, not very verbal, or is just really young and not able to kind of have a very complex conversation, I would say if the child is about to hurt someone else, about to hurt themselves, about to smash something, break something, I would just pick that child up. I would say, hey, not going to let you hit your sister right now. I'll just remove him from the situation, take him to another room, and that's one way I would handle it. If the child is old enough to have a more complex conversation, say 7, 8 years old, I might bring it up. So, a saying that I really like is prevention is better than cure. So if you wait until the last minute and then just respond in the heat of the moment during like an emergency, it's going to be much worse than if you had just prepared ahead of time. And so if you notice your kid has a hard time handling a certain interaction, a certain challenge, I would just find a time, maybe it's bedtime, maybe it's at dinner, maybe you're sitting in the car, and just bring it up and say, hey, I've noticed you've had a hard time brushing your teeth at night. You never want to brush your teeth. Can you tell me what's going on? Just get as much information as you can, and because the thing is, we don't know why, right? If we just pressure the kid to brush his teeth and say, if you don't brush your teeth, no TV tomorrow, or if you brush your teeth, I'll give you a sticker. You're not actually getting to the root of the issue. And so we need to figure out what is the root of the issue. And you find out by asking, right? Just threatening a punishment doesn't actually fix the problem. If the problem is the kid just hates that flavor of toothpaste, maybe it's that simple. You just need to go back to the old toothpaste that he used to like. Maybe the toothbrush hurts his gums. Maybe that means it's time for bedtime and he wanted to just keep reading his book or something, And so we have to ask these questions to find out. And then the next step would be explaining the parents' concerns, your concerns, and just say, hey, so my concerns are if you don't brush your teeth, you're going to have really bad breath. Your breath is going to be stinky. No one's going to want to be around you. Your teeth are going to get cavities. They're going to hurt really bad. And we're going to have to go to the dentist. You're going to have to sit in a chair for a long time while he drills into your teeth to fix them. Right. And so we do need to brush your teeth. That's why it's important. And so I would explain my concerns. And then at that point, I would brainstorm with the kid and say, all right, so how can we find a solution that satisfies all of your concerns and all of mine? Can you help me come up with one? Right. And so we go through as many as we can think of. We don't shoot any down. And the idea,
even
the kid,
the silly ones they might have.
right. It's important because it's practice for them to learn how to solve these problems themselves one day. And so maybe the kid will say, well, what if I just never brush my teeth? Well, that doesn't address my concerns that you don't get cavities and sticky breath, right? And so, or, he could say, well, what if we just had 10 things of toothpaste? and I could choose which one I want every night. And maybe that's okay, or maybe that uncovers another concern I didn't know I have, and is that we can't be spending $40 on toothpaste or whatever, And so, yeah, when we find one we land on, we go into the next step is just trying it out, seeing what happens, and if the kid doesn't brush his teeth the next night, I can remind him of the deal. Say, hey, do you remember we made this deal? And he might say, oh yeah, that's right. Or he might say, oh, but you know what? I still am really not wanting to brush my teeth. And we can talk about that. And, find maybe we uncovered another one of his concerns that he didn't know he had.
Mm.
Um, and then at that point, we can circle back, start the whole process over, uncover his concerns, explain my concerns, and go from there.
Okay, so it's more around observing his behavior. We just say he or she. So observing his behavior and not reacting when it's happening, but talk to them after it or before it. Well, if you observe it, then you can talk about it like an hour later, for example.
Yeah, an hour later, the next day at bedtime, whenever the heat of the moment is completely past, it's not stressful at all. There's no tension. No one's upset. That's, you never want to have these complex conversations when kids are upset or when you're upset, because we just aren't able to think as rationally in those moments.
At that time, the fuse is already lit and no one's listening to anyone. So
right. Yeah.
we revert back to, say, punishment, for example, or shouting, for example.
Yeah.
But that's still not really, it's getting your message across, but not really in the right manner, because you're not teaching them anything. You're just kind of telling them what to do.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a tough one. It's a tough one if you're raising kids to get them to listen to you. But I agree. I think you have to lean into their concerns, like why are they not
For
doing
sure.
X, Y, and Z?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you don't get to the root cause, you're just not going to solve the problem. It's just going to keep popping up every single day. And you got to figure out what's actually going on under the surface.
Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant. Okay. It's never okay to raise your voice at a child. Why is that?
Yeah. Well, an interesting thing happens when you raise your voice at a child. They start to never listen to you unless you're raising your voice. And so, if you want your kid to listen and not tune you out, never ever raise your voice. And that's more of a kind of utilitarian perspective. And you could get into the moral perspective and say, well, the child doesn't have any option to leave. He's kind of trapped there. In a way, he's kind of a prisoner. And so, because he has no option to leave, he's not there voluntarily. We have to be very, very careful with how we treat our kids. Just like we have to be very careful not to abuse prisoners or other people that have no option to leave. And so, yeah, we can't shout, we can't yell or call names at children, because especially what parents say and other role models, it really sticks deep down in their core identity. And when we tell them things, they believe it. And so, for example, if you tell a kid he's bad or he's naughty or he's done something really wrong, he'll believe you. And I was hearing from a parent the other day, his kid says all the time, I'm just a bad kid. I'm a horrible kid. And he's just shocked that his kid would say this. But all along, they've been telling him, whenever he does something, whenever he misbehaves, they're saying, you're being a bad boy right now. That was bad of you. And he's believed them, and he's accepted that. And he believes that he is a bad person now, and it's become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so, there's a phrase that I like to teach my clients, and it's called describe, don't evaluate. So whenever you evaluate a child, positive or negative, you're either giving them that negative identity, or even if you give them a positive evaluation or judgment, it's still a judgment. And every time you give that judgment, they think in their head, is this accurate? And so if you say, wow, you did amazing at the soccer game today, he might think to himself or say out loud, what are you talking about? I literally tripped in the middle of the
Mm.
most important play. I sucked. Like, but if you stick to describing, stick to what's objective, it just can't be disputed. You can say, wow, you scored a goal today. That was so exciting for me to watch. I was so happy to see, like, I was so proud of you in that moment. That's objective. That's your emotional state. And that's what he did do. And, the kid will just say, yeah, I did do that. That's awesome. And
Mm.
so, yeah, describe, don't evaluate. It's a really powerful tool. And yeah, raising your voice and calling kids naughty or bad, it can be very, very harmful. And even praise and excessive praise is very harmful.
Because like that, we just refer to raising for especially fathers, and I know a lot of that is to do with the way that we were raised, you know. And if you're having an argument with someone, you raise your voice to kind of get your point across. But no one's actually hearing anyone. We're just shouting at each other. So doing that to a child, it's the same thing. They might do what you do. They might do what you want them to do, but it's not really healthy for them. It's almost like you're punishing them into like you're giving them no choice. It's like you do this or that's it. It's no options.
Right, 100%. Yeah, it's a power struggle. It's a form of a power struggle.
Mm,
It's really, when you get down to it, it's intimidation. Like a lion will roar to scare,
mm,
other
correct.
animals.
Yeah.
A parent raising their voice is saying, I'm big and strong and I'm going to make you do this. Right. And so if that's not the relationship you want to have with your child, where you're intimidating them into compliance, I would say probably don't yell. And also, if you don't want your kids to be yelling at you, if, then don't
Eventually,
yell
they
at
start
them.
doing that.
Right. Yeah, no, they will follow your example for better or for worse. And so if you give them that kind of example, don't be surprised when they do the exact same thing to you.
Then it becomes, what did you say back to me?
Right. Right.
mm, yes. Yes. And so, why do you think parents punish the children, mainly in the West? Because it's a more global thing anyway. I think punishment is like, and when I say punishment in terms of like force, for example, hitting the child. So why do we result back to that?
Yeah, I think it is very, very common. I don't think it's universal. I'm actually reading a book right now, really interesting book. It's called yeah, go figure. It's called Hunt Gather Parent. And it's about
Okay.
how there are a lot of these kind of third world indigenous tribes across the globe that actually parent in really similar ways, and don't use any punishment, don't raise their voice at all, and they have some really interesting practices, and their kids are kind of insanely well behaved, and that in a way that the Western people would think is like completely impossible and ridiculous. And so, one of the reasons I think people punish so much is that the West, uh, going back a long ways, it was back actually in the like 6th century, the Catholic. So we had back then in Europe and across the world, everywhere, we had these tight knit communities, and part of the reason they were so tight knit were like, um, not only did you have cousins and uncles and aunts and grandparents and great grandparents and neighbors constantly working together, walking in and out of each other's houses, having meals together at all times, sitting on the porch together and like
mm,
by the campfire, and um, you know not only did we have all of that family and community really close, even living in the same house often or next door, but they would be intermarrying with their close community. So people would be marrying a family member of an in-law. They would be intermarrying with a family member of a godparent, and
yeah.
or like a third or fourth cousin or something. And so these families would be even tighter knit because they're intermarried, and so whole like clans would
Mm,
be loosely bonded together. And so the West actually stopped doing that around the 6th century. And it's because of actually a decree by the Catholic Church, who back then had a lot of sway in society. Sorry if you can hear my kids in the background. Um, but what happened? Sorry about that.
No?
All right, maybe we'll have to cut this out. Just give me 1 second. Okay, sorry about that.
No? That happens.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not pretending. I'm not lying. I actually am a parent. There's your evidence.
Mm.
Okay. So what I was saying is, yeah, back in the sixth century, the Catholic Church, who had a lot of sway back then, they made a decree that it's illegal to marry your first cousin. Which, okay, that's reasonable. And then next, it became it's illegal to marry your second cousin, or even your third cousin, or your fourth cousin, all the way to your sixth cousin. It was considered incest to marry your sixth cousin, which is very, very distantly related. Like your first cousin, you share about 12% of DNA. Your sixth cousin, you share 0.1% of DNA with them. And then it became illegal to marry any in-law, any god relative, and you couldn't even like if a woman, if her husband died, she couldn't even marry the husband's brother, which was a biblical practice,
Mm.
even very common back in the day.
Mm.
That became illegal. It counted as incest in the eyes of the Catholic Church. And so really it became illegal to have these tight knit, close community and clans. And so what ended up happening slowly over time as these restrictions became stronger and stronger is communities became looser and looser until eventually in about the 1500s, we have what uh, what we understand as the nuclear family began to kind of become mainstream in Europe. And so it's just the mom and the dad raising the kids. Whereas before there was like literally, not an exaggeration, literally the whole village was participating in
Mm.
raising the kids. All the extended family, all the neighbors, even, servants if they had any, or cooks, or uh,
Yeah.
sojourners coming in and out of the house. Everyone was talking, interacting, teaching, mentoring kids. And so now it's just parents. And so I think parents, they're doing the job of like literally 20 people, these one or two people. And today they're like half of parents are single parents. So they're one person's doing the job of 20 people. And so I think a lot of parents in the West in the last few centuries feel completely overwhelmed by parenting, and for good reason. Like it's not meant to be done alone or just
Mm.
with two people. And so I think in exasperation, they're just freaking out, trying to figure out how to do things. And they're like, I just need my kid to do this one thing right now. I need them to put their pajamas on. I need to change their diaper. I need them to brush their teeth or eat their vegetables or whatever it is. And so they just
Mm.
end up forcing that kid, however that comes about. And oftentimes it's by threatening punishments or by, enacting punishments. And I think that is one big reason that people parent so much is because they don't have any support at all, really. Or maybe they get to see the grandparents like every other month or something. But even these days, so many grandparents are even in different states, different countries, and
Mm.
people are just alone and isolated more than they ever have in human history. The nuclear family is not traditional. It's not historical. The historical model of a family is a wide, large, extended, tight knit, close uh, community, even a clan at that point. And I think our culture is really, really struggling because we lost that support network for raising children. And children are suffering in some big ways because of it.
And do you think that's the reason why we resort into punishment? Because that's the only kind of thing we have left. Because obviously it's a kid, so force, for example, would make them stop because they don't
Yeah.
have any other support. So we turn to that.
Yeah. I think people think that that's the only option they have.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah,
of
yeah.
course, what I do is I tell people what other options they have, right? And so there are other options, just like what I was talking about earlier. But yeah, I think parents don't know that there are alternatives besides just punishing or just letting the kid have free reign and do whatever they want, or just bribing the kid into doing what they want. But yeah, there are alternatives, but I don't think people know what they are a lot of the time.
Mm, yeah. I have a question here. I think it's my next one actually. About tell me about how rewarding children can backfire.
Yeah, absolutely. So, uh, a big problem, there's a lot, but one big problem with rewarding
One of the big
kids.
problems, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. One of the big problems with rewarding or bribing kids to do things is that it completely distracts from intrinsic motivation. So if it's important for a kid to, I don't know, load the dishes or something, it's really important that he understands why he should load the dishes. And
Mm,
if you say, okay, you get a gold star if you load the dishes, or, you get an extra scoop of ice cream or something if you load the dishes,
mm,
then he's not learning to load the dishes because he should load the dishes, because we need to have clean dishes, because we need to contribute to the family. He's learning, oh, I'll do it because I get something out of it. So as soon as you don't have any gold stickers, or you're out of ice cream, or you know he
the
just
pocket
it
money, yeah.
right, if you're out of that, then you say, hey, can you load the dishes? And he said, why would I? There's nothing in it for me. Why would I do that? Right. And so that's a big problem with rewards.
Mm. We tend to think it's a form of manipulation as well, I think.
100%.
Because ideally you want them to do it because they're contributing and they want to do it.
Yeah.
But if I'm only doing it because what I'm getting, when that stops, like, I have no reason to want to do it.
Yes, 100%. And the thing is, punishment and rewards are really just two sides of the same coin. And so you could say the same thing about punishment. Like, do you really want your kid to be the kind of person that doesn't do something that's wrong just because of the punishment he'll receive if he does it? Or do you want him to be the kind of person that doesn't do things that are wrong because it's wrong and you shouldn't do things that are wrong? Right. So
Mm,
teaching kids the natural consequences is is what I'm all about, instead of imposed consequences and unnatural consequences, illogical consequences. I prefer to say, if you do this, this is what will happen naturally. I'm not making it happen. It just will. Like, if you don't brush your teeth, you will have bad breath. It just will happen. Right. And so helping kids understand the effects of their actions.
mm,
That's a big part of my parenting philosophy.
mm. It's like once you start instilling that fear, for example, with punishment, even when they want to do something that they think is right, but because it comes with punishment, they just want.
Mm.
Mm. Yes, my next one is misbehaving children. Is that intentional?
Yeah, I suppose. What do you mean by intentional there? Just help me understand.
Like when a parent says, like, "Oh my God, that child is," they know they annoy me. It's like
Yeah.
he
Okay.
knows he's annoying me, so that's why he's doing it.
Yeah. No, I think it's really easy to jump to conclusions about what our kids' motivations are.
Mm,
Um, and at the end of the day, we can't know. We can't know what their motivations are until we do some digging. And a lot of the time, when we assume we know what's going on in that kid's head, we're just wrong. A lot of the
mm,
time. That's why you have to ask. And so, I mean, with punishment, a lot of the time, parents assume they know the motivation, and then they also assume they know the solution to that motivation. And so they're making two assumptions back to back, right? And so, yeah, no, I think a lot of the time kids have like perfectly fine motivations in their mind. Like, for example, if a kid, snatches a toy from their sibling, you know, you don't there's no need to jump to the conclusion that he's just being mean and he wants to make that kid cry and he just is selfish or something. It's a perfectly acceptable thing to want a toy.
mm.
The child just might not know what do you do when you want a toy that someone else is playing with. Like,
Yes.
he needs to learn how do you handle that. It's a difficult problem for a 2-year old to figure out what to do when someone else has something they want. And so you have to teach them. Kids, they're not experts in how to navigate social situations.
Mm.
And so,
No.
yeah, you've got to say, okay, so here's what we do next time. If your sister has a truck and you want to play with that truck, here's something you can say. You can say, hey, when can I have a turn with that? Hey, when you're done with that, can I play with it? Say something like that. And teach them how to handle it rather than just saying, that's not how you handle it, right? Or I told you how to handle it. You should have known. So you're being bad. Like, there's no need to jump to that conclusion.
Yeah, yeah, because I think what we do a lot is we assume that they should know. Like, oh, you're 5 by now, you should know better. But like, they're still 5.
Yeah, absolutely. I think parents often overestimate the abilities of their child. And even like a common line is, you did this yesterday, why can't you do this today? Well,
Yes.
just because they've done it once doesn't mean that they can do it perfectly every single time in the future. I mean, and even grown adults struggle with temptation,
Oh yeah.
even when they know they shouldn't have, a drink right now. They shouldn't have some ice cream. They shouldn't eat a bag of chips. How many parents, find themselves still eating the junk food, drinking the alcohol or whatever, cheating on their
Mm,
diet? And it's like, okay, you could say, well, you knew you shouldn't have done that, so I need to punish you now. Like, no, that's not what they need. That's not what you need when you fall into that kind of a temptation. And it's not helping kids to just shame them or punish them, because maybe they did know, but maybe they need help figuring out what to do with temptation when it comes. How do you handle these difficult situations when they are difficult? And
mm,
expecting a 5-year-old to have more self control than a grown adult who cheats on their diet, it's like, that's not very reasonable.
yeah. Because when you say it to adults, they're not going to be impressed, but we tend to do it to children.
Yeah.
I In relation to intentions there, do you think sometime when they annoying, sorry, I'm going to use the word annoying, they're annoying you for an intention, it's because they feel like you're not giving them enough attention?
Yeah, it certainly could be. One rule of thumb that I heard once that I think is interesting is, if a child is making you feel a certain emotion, oftentimes that's the exact same emotion that you're feeling. And so if you're really frustrated by what your kid is doing right now, there's a good chance that your kid is really frustrated about something, and just subconsciously somehow he's making you feel that same emotion so that you can empathize with him, right? And so if he is feeling really frustrated that you're not spending much time with him, he might frustrate you, and
Mm,
in that way kind of communicate to you, hey, I'm really frustrated, I don't have the words to express this, but I'm really upset and something is really wrong, and I need you to pay attention right now.
mm, yeah, definitely. Because I think if you give them the right amount of intention, they stop. I
Mm.
think anyway, like if you give them the intention that they need, they'll stop annoying you. But if you're not doing it, then they keep pushing, pushing, pushing. It's like, look at me. And how do we not project our needs and preferences to children?
Can you expand on that one just a little bit so I know what you mean?
How do we not project our needs? This is around getting them to want the same thing that we want, getting them to like the same things that we like because we like them, so we think they should like them because they're our children.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a common thing for parents, to want to live out their dreams, and things they wish they did differently as a child, live it out through their kid.
Mm,
And so, oh man, I wish I played more sports, or I wish I was the football star, or whatever. So I'm going to put my kid in football, and I'm going to make him go to football practice and play lots of football games and get in really good shape. And I'm going to, shame him when he fails. I'm going to give him lavish praise when he
mm,
makes a good play. And yeah, I think it can be really harmful. I think there's just no getting around it. There's a lot of, whether it's genetic or something else, kids just are who they are. And, pressuring them to be a certain way is only going to serve to build resentment. And so they're just going to really, and it backfires, because you want him to really love football. Well, now he hates football because he's forced to go all the time, right? Maybe he
mm,
would like football if you didn't force him. If you just talked about it and suggested it and encouraged it, but you didn't make it this huge deal where, no, you are going to play football. And so I think I think we shouldn't try to live out our fantasies and our dreams through our kids. We should really give them every opportunity and let them choose. And if we think they're making a poor decision, just explain our concerns and talk about it rather than just, forcing it in an unnatural
Mm,
way.
yeah, because I think that's kind of I think there's thing that thinking that the kid will have to be just like me, and we call them like a mini me type of thing. It's like there should be a separate individual,
Yeah,
but there's that need
absolutely.
to make them like us, so we stay connected to them instead of letting them be who they want to be and supporting that.
Yeah, for sure.
And now, obviously, they're gonna try out so many things, but that's the whole point: the experimenting on what they might like or what they might not like, instead of telling them, "Oh, you're gonna like this, just do it."
Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's important to let them experiment with their own interests, see what they are passionate about, what they're naturally good at. Let them pursue those. And when parents do this thing where they withhold approval or they give way too much approval, in both ways, kids can become really dependent and crave that kind of praise or approval. And it can be really unhealthy where kids aren't able, even when they grow up to be adults, they like really need that validation from their parents. And if
Mm,
they're it goes back to intrinsic motivation. They have trouble doing important things just for the sake of doing them. They need someone to pat them on the head and say, "Oh, good job, little boy," and or you know be cursed for the rest of their life with, my father never loved me, he never hugged me, he never told me that he
mm,
was proud of me. That can really burden, you know, adults long into their adulthood, the fact that their father never told them he was proud of him. And in his mind, he probably had some kind of justification that he couldn't do that or else he would get too comfortable and he needed to push him. And whatever the
mm,
justification is, it can do a lot of damage, and there are a lot of unintended downsides to that.
mm. Because there is many adults who like that are still seeking for parental approval. Like, could be in your 30s or 40s, and you're still kind of like waiting for mom or dad to say that, to give you that encouragement. And
Absolutely.
mm, yeah. My next one is the effect of punishment. What are some of the things the children are learning? So when
Yeah.
you're punishing them, like, what essentially are you teaching them?
Yeah. So one big lesson you're teaching them is, okay, the bigger and stronger person gets to decide how things go. Might makes right. I'm bigger than you, so I can just force you to do what I want. And that's a dangerous precedent to set because you know what? This child will be bigger than someone else in their lifetime, whether that's a younger sibling, whether
Mm,
that's, the family cat. They that, you know, bullies come from homes where they are bullied themselves. And so if you bully your child, you're teaching him, hey, this is what we do with people that we have power over. We bully them. And then of
mm,
course there's the problem with that I was talking about with intrinsic motivation is if you punish a kid for not doing something, they never learn why they should do it. They don't learn that natural drive within themselves to do important things. And so, yeah, there's a lot of problems with punishment, but there's a couple there.
mm. Yeah. When we talk about bullying, that I think I saw it somewhere or heard it somewhere that, like, the child who's bullying people in the schoolyard is just representing what they're going through themselves,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And then in school, they get punished as well for bullying, and then when they go home, they get punished even more. The
Yeah,
poor
well,
child is just stuck in that cycle.
and oftentimes, the sad truth is, teachers will actually not deal with bullies at all, not talk to them, not talk to their parents because they
Mm,
know the parents are bullies. They don't want to have to fight some huge, big 40-year-old bully. And so what ends up happening is the kid that's getting bullied is the one that says, oh, why are you starting trouble? You should just leave those kids alone. The kid getting bullied is the one that gets all the heat from teachers. And it's really unhealthy all around.
Yeah, it's like, let's remove you from the situation instead of looking at the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Good stuff. My next question is, what are some of the ways we can help kids obey? This is removing from the punishment. So ways we can get them to kind of listen to you, obey what you're saying.
Yeah. So, few things. So we can, yeah,
Someone's looking for attention.
yeah, I'm sorry about that.
No
So
worries.
one thing you can do is you can, by avoiding the punishments, avoiding the spanking and the timeouts and the grounding and the
Mm,
confiscating privileges, it so when you do those things, you're damaging the bond. And really, in parenting, everything is about the bond. Everything is about, can I trust this person? And if they can't trust you, you can't give them any advice at all, really.
no.
Um, it's all like, people make a big deal out of respect. Like, you can't disrespect me. You don't talk back to me. You should respect me. I am your father. I deserve respect. I think so. First of all, I think respect is earned. I don't think you can demand respect. But second
Mm,
of all, I think much more important than respect is credibility. And I think if you aren't being credible, for example, you tell your kids not to hit and then you spank them. You tell them not to raise their voice while you're shouting at them not to raise their voice, right? And
mm.
you tell them not to snatch their toys, so you take their toys away so that they can learn not to snatch. These like hypocritical things. It's like, okay, so you're not credible. How can I trust you? And if you want your kids to obey, you need to be credible. And um, I think I mentioned this earlier, but also, so if you're raising your voice or if you're repeating instructions, that's another one. If you repeat yourself over and over, your kids are going to be tuning you out, right? They're
Yeah.
like,
Oh, yeah.
if you just tell them, 18 times, hey, it's time to brush your teeth now, they're just going to be like, okay, there's just a lot of noise coming over there, and I'm just going to not pay attention anymore,
Mm,
or they learn, okay, I know I don't have to even listen until they finally do raise their voice. Then I know they actually are serious, and that's not what we want to teach our kids either.
mm,
And so, one thing you can do is you can have that conversation about, hey, why is it that you don't want to brush your teeth? Or you can, if you find yourself feeling the impulse to repeat yourself, you can just say, no, I'm just going to say it one time. I'm just going to say, hey, it's time to brush your teeth. Let's go. Let's brush our teeth now. And then if they don't go, it's okay. Like, it's not a challenge to your authority. He's not defying you. He's not disrespecting you. Like, this is just like, something's going on in that kid. He has some kind of justification. Maybe he's in the middle of reading a book, or he just like is off in his own little world. We don't
mm.
need to assume there are malicious intent there, malicious motives. And you can just come back in 3 or 4 minutes, see if he's ready, right? We don't need to escalate. We don't need to say, okay, if you don't go, I'm going to threaten this punishment. Um, we don't need to intimidate. We don't need to raise our voice. Just, okay, that's fine. I'll move on to something else. I'll come back in 4 minutes, 5 minutes. Like, it's okay. And a lot of the time when parents are using force, when they're, grabbing their child, bringing them into the bathroom and like, I'm going to brush your teeth right now. They're, they can, they're doing it because they have a justification that this needs to happen. But in
Mm.
reality, like, what will happen if this kid doesn't brush his teeth? What if he doesn't even brush his teeth all night? Like, until like for the next 3 days, he doesn't even brush his teeth at all. What will happen? Well, his breath is going to stink a little bit, but he's not going to get cavities because he didn't brush his teeth for 3 days. His teeth won't fall out of his head. They're not going to like decay over the course of 3 days. They're not going to turn yellow forever for the rest of his life. So in reality, it's not actually an emergency. Like, yes, we want him to build these habits, but we can't force them, because there is no justification to use force, because it actually isn't an emergency. we can really only use force if it is some kind of an emergency, if he's about to hurt someone, if he's about to hurt himself, if he's about to, write with Sharpie on the wall. You can say, nope, not going to let you write with Sharpie on the
Yeah.
wall. I'm going to grab that Sharpie right now. And so, yeah, just understanding that it's not, it's not okay. At the end of the day, it's just not okay to be forcing kids to do things, but also it's not helpful, and it's not letting them learn to build up that natural motivation to do it. And so, yeah, one of the ways, instead of forcing, instead of raising the voice, instead of repeating yourself, just make a request, wait 4 or 5 minutes, make it again. You might have to do that 4, 5, 6 times. You might, but you'll be surprised that eventually the kid will just get up and say, okay, yeah, I'll do that.
Mm. Mm. And I think with habits as well, a lot of them anyway, we have to model the behavior that we want them to do.
Mm-hmm.
And try and encourage them into it without forcing them into it. So like if you're doing something, they might be like, oh, I want to do that too, because like that, they're trying to be like you. So you're no longer having to force them. They just want to do it because you're doing it.
Yeah, 100%. No, that's actually something that in this book that I'm reading, one of the things they do, this anthropologist was talking about, she visited this village in Mexico, and she was like shocked because this 12-year-old girl, she was staying with these people to study how they live and how they do parenting. And so this, in the morning, this 12-year-old girl wakes up, immediately walks into the kitchen and starts doing dishes. Like, what? This 12-year-old is just doing dishes. No one even asked her. And it's like, what is going on? And so what they do in that culture is and cultures around the world, not just this one, they teach kids, if, from toddlerhood, they have the toddler involved in contributing to the family. And so in very, very small, simple ways, hey, can you carry this over here? Can you put this in the trash can? Mm. Can you like chop this carrot right here? Can you put this thing in the fridge? Can you unscrew this cap? Like whatever it is. And like toddlers, if you've ever been around a toddler, they love doing things themselves. Like one of the things they say all the time is like, no, I want to do it. I want to do it. And it's because they have that natural craving to learn. They want to be just like the grown-ups. They want to become an adult. They really have a strong desire for that. And so if we just never squash that desire and we just foster it and we say, yeah, I'd love for you to help. Hey, can you help me do this thing right here? And fostering that from toddlerhood, then if we never let go of that, they will just keep doing it forever and they will just always have motivation. Because, something I heard that I thought was interesting is, to a toddler, there's no difference between play and doing chores. It's just all the same. Like, it's all just interesting learning how the world works. And yeah, it's just teaching kids the natural motivations, and then they'll just it'll just stick with them and they'll just naturally want to contribute.
I think the more they're involved and they feel like they're contributing and they can see what they're doing is actually playing a role, you don't have to worry about them doing it because they kind of just learn themselves,
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think about kind of what we teach kids without realizing it in kind of our Western society is, okay, so what I want, the parent speaking to their toddler, what I want you to do is I want you to watch TV. I want you to be on your iPad. I want you to be entertained. I want you to be pacified. I do not want you to be bored. I do not want you to like slow me down as I'm doing the laundry or doing dishes. I want you to let me cook. Leave me alone. Just go over there, be entertained. Like, we're teaching them to be like, some princess in a castle where everyone does everything for them instead of being a contributing member of the family. We shouldn't be, a servant and a maid and a waitress to our and a waiter to our kids. We should be, they should be part of the family. And so part of fostering that identity of being part of the family, a contributing member, is as soon as they're able to do anything, having them come alongside whatever you do, every single thing you do, they're just always there right next to you doing something to contribute. And I think that's really important, to not teach kids that their purpose is to be entertained and just not bored. Their purpose is largely contribute to the family. And that's just, it makes all the difference.
I think we have this mindset that, oh, I have to do it for them because they're my child, or I'll be a bad parent. But ideally, you should be teaching and coaching them like basic requirements to be a human, like how to look after yourself.
Yeah, and I think a lot of parents just are like, well, if my kid helps, it's going to take like 3 times as long. And so, yeah, I'm just going to get it done. So, yeah, you just go over there, read a book, color in your coloring book, and I'll just pound these dishes out, make lunch real quick. But we're teaching our kids a lesson that we don't realize when we do that.
Mm, mm. Two more questions for you. Okay, this one. What can I do when my family disapprove of my parenting?
It's a big question. It's
This
a
can
big
happen
question.
when you start doing peaceful parenting. All of a sudden, be like, "What? You let your child do that?" Oh,
Yeah, it certainly can be a very emotional topic. Um,
mm,
I mean, at the end of the day, when you become a parent, in a way, decisions get a lot easier because no longer do you get to decide, yeah, I'm just going to do whatever I kind of feel like. Oh, I think I might want to do this. Well, maybe I'll
mm,
do that. But when you're a parent, it's like, okay, the one thing that I make all my decisions by is what is best for my kids. It's not what will people think of me. It's not do my parents approve? Is my sister going to shame me for this? Is
mm,
would this be uncomfortable for me? It's like no. The only question that is number one is what is best for my kids. And so yeah, maybe your parents don't approve. Maybe your neighbors don't approve, or the other people at school, or at the end of the day, that's not an excuse to punish your kids. It's not an excuse to mistreat them, to raise your voice at them, to take their stuff
mm,
away. So yeah, I mean, you can use that as an opportunity, of course, to say, yeah, let me tell you why I do that. Yeah, I read this really interesting thing. I listened to this really crazy guy on a podcast once. I thought it was so interesting. I never thought about things this way. I didn't even know there was an alternative, and I learned about it. Can I tell you about it? Or I read these studies, and it turns out there's all this data that says the way we were doing things actually is counterproductive in a lot of ways. And or I read these parenting books, and they were just so insightful, and I had no idea that rewarding teaches kids a counterproductive lesson. And so yeah, it can be a start of a really interesting conversation. And I found people are much more open than I expect them to be, at least in my family. you know
okay, yeah,
I was raised in a house with lots of punishment, with spanking, with confiscating, giving consequences, taking away privileges,
mm,
taking away the PlayStation, and taking away TV time, and um, but my parents have been really receptive to my thoughts on parenting, and they've done a little bit of reading about psychology, and they've actually brought it up to me without me realizing or bringing up the conversation that, hey, have you heard that, if you frame things this way, it helps the kid? And like, yeah, I have heard that, and it's really interesting. Let's talk about it. So, yeah, I would say it can go really well.
mm,
It doesn't always get into a heated debate, but if it does, then you have to choose between your parents' approval and doing what's best for your kids. For me, that's not a hard decision, although emotionally it is difficult.
yeah, emotionally, yeah, yeah, because they're still on their mindset. Because then they'd be like, "Oh, we did a good job with you. Why are you doing it different?" That way.
Yeah,
So yeah, it could be emotionally challenging for sure.
100%.
And my last question is, what are the biggest stresses parenting facing today in our Western sanitized society?
Yeah, I mean, so like I was saying, I think a huge one is one, two, and sometimes one parent is doing the job that used to be done by 20 people. Like, we're
Mm,
not designed to be 100% full time child raising. We're meant to have a huge support network, and, other people with lots, decades of parenting experience teaching us how they handled things and what was taught to them by their parents and grandparents. And so parents just don't have those mentors,
Mm,
teaching them how to parent. It's like so many parents, I think there's this idea that they should just be able to go off instinct. It should just come naturally when there's a lot of wisdom we've built up over thousands of years, and it's just not being transmitted anymore between parents and children or grandparents and children. And so people don't know how to parent. And so thankfully these days we have podcasts like this one, and we have books, and we have YouTube videos, and Twitter
mm,
threads, and
yeah.
there are ways to find out parenting, but we're kind of rediscovering them in a way, and the West has kind of forgotten them. So there's that part that, yeah, it's just parents are doing the job of 20 people, and we're just not built for that.
Mm, yeah, I think it's a matter of trying to, like in some cultures, like I think even in Italy, like the real families are real, like still together. The grandparents and the grandmothers are all pretty much involved. And we just underestimate how much weight that takes off the parents,
Mm,
instead of just like your mom and dad, now it's your job, there you go. We forget that you need a community, you need other people helping you with different things. And instead of just like, oh, we should know what to do or we should be doing it ourselves. Yeah. That we should know what to do. That's the shame. It's like, I should be able to know this, but how would you know? That way.
yeah.
That's the challenge of being a parent. But yeah, no, thank you. Thank you very much. I have three more questions for you, which is not in relation to parenting.
Okay.
Yeah. So the first one is, what do you do for fun?
Man, right now I love to read, and I spend almost all my free time building my business here, my side hustle, doing my parenting coaching thing, writing. I love writing. I write on Twitter all the time. I've got a few threads in the works I'm really excited about. So yeah, I love to write. I listen to podcasts all the time. I like going to the gym. I've got a gym buddy. We meet at the gym 2 or 3 times a week, and yeah, it's a good time just hanging out.
Mm, And where are you online? What's your? I know you're on Twitter anyway. So where are you online?
Yeah, I do have a YouTube channel, but mostly I'm on Twitter, and I'll post threads and tweets and memes there, and it's a good time. And yeah, that's where you can find me, is at peaceful parenting, at peaceful_parenting on Twitter.
And on your Twitter, I know some of the stuff you post are kind of similar to what we talked about. Do you get a lot of pushback from some parents?
Yeah, sure, of course, naturally, it's okay. I mean, what one piece of pushback I just is just funny to me, because it's completely false, is people accuse me of being like a leftist or a liberal or a snowflake or
Oh,
something, and it's just like I couldn't be farther from a liberal. I'm I guess there's this idea that conservatives are like disciplinarians, and they spank their kids, and they use punishments, and they have authority, and they discipline. And I mean, even many Christians fall into that
oh,
category,
yeah,
and which I think
definitely.
is a shame and a misunderstanding of Scripture. But that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
whole new topic.
but yeah, no, people love to call me a leftist and a liberal, but I don't get it. I guess I kind of get it, but I think it's funny because I'm very, very not a liberal.
It's that mindset, like they have an idea of how parenting should be, and here you are telling them the complete opposite. Like, don't raise your voice.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of in our culture, the left, the liberals, the progressives, who are kind of upending things and saying, no, we need to completely rethink this from the beginning. But in
Mm,
reality, it's the conservatives who have this new experimental parenting method historically. And I'm actually the traditionalist, saying, let's go back to how we were 2,000 years ago, And it would make way more sense if we did. And there are some tribes that are not Western that still operate in this way, and we can learn from them. And so, in a way, they're the progressives, in a funny, backwards kind of way.
My last question for you is, sorry, if do you attend therapy?
I don't currently, no.
No, I was going to ask you, what would your ideal therapist be like?
My ideal therapist? I think he would be, I mean, I have done some therapy in the past, and I found it really, really valuable. I just love having that third person perspective. We can kind of get stuck in our ways in some line of thinking, and just having someone else say, actually, that doesn't really make sense, and let me just show you why. Sometimes that's so important. So I don't know, my ideal therapist, I mean, of course, someone that knows the Bible very well, strong, devoted Christian, someone who is has mentors of his own, someone who can phrase things in a, I guess, a gentle way, who can say, hey, I think you might be missing something, without just being like, dude, you're a total idiot. And there's a time and a place for being like, for calling names or whatever. And I'm a guy, I mean, I can take it, but if I find that I can take feedback a lot better, if it's just said in a polite way. So someone that can be a little bit diplomatic. It doesn't need to be like too sugar-coated, but it helps. So that's a couple of things I would like in a therapist.
Brilliant. If you enjoyed today's episode, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a quick review on my Facebook page, Don't Be Afraid to Talk, or DM me on Instagram. The show notes will include all of the relevant links from today's episode. If you haven't already, please download, leave a rating, and share with your friends. You might just reach that person who needs to hear this message. Please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. I am James Lumumba, signing off with gratitude.